Welcome back. If you weren't in the workshop earlier, just so you know who I am, I'm Sam. I'm one of the members of the Leadership Circle for Scotland's AI Alliance. Welcome. I'm hoping you're enjoying all the day and you've had a great afternoon already. I am going to hand over at this point so you can find out the workshop that we are doing. I'm so sorry. I have reached an age that I can't read with my glasses on and I have to take them. We are doing a workshop now about AI and workplace cultures, and I'm going to hand you over to Kendra to do a full introduction of what that's all about. So please enjoy.
Thank you so much, Sam. Welcome everybody to this workshop. And to avoid any frustration, this is a workshop about AI and workplace cultures. But it also, if you have read the small print, it's also about Industry 5. And unpacking the human in a quite interesting setting that is manufacturing. So if you're expecting to learn just about cultures, that might be disappointing to you, but everyone else is of course welcome here. I wanted to briefly introduce my team, because even though I'm here and from our guests, it's many of us who planned this. I wanted to say hi to Doris Golarios, she's over there, to Deb Moore, who's over there, and also part of the broader team is Andy Sherlock. We're all somehow connected to the University of Strathclyde, and we are delighted that we have the opportunity to host this workshop here with you. This is my second point to be made. This is a workshop, right? So we really want to work with you on some of the ideas we assembled. We did some explorative research and he has invited some core experts here, domain experts, and I come to them later. So the running order is really all about unpacking the human in Industry 5, and it's going to be two different settings. So the first half an hour, we'll talk about workforce outcomes. What does that actually mean? What's Industry 5? What's it to do with AI? And how is that all connected? And we will hear from our three guests what their perspective on that will be. And in the second part, we will have a look at the people actually modeling and planning said Industry 5. Any engineers in the room, any computer scientists in the room, don't shy away. We want to bring you in. We want to hear from you, but we will also showcase some of our first insights from some research we've done on that. So I am really delighted that as of today, we have three really amazing guests over here. First of all, I wanted to welcome Jane McBride. Jane McBride is Professor of Innovation and Operation Management here at the University of Strathclyde. She's also co-director of the ESRC Made Smarter project. And as you might guess, Made Smarter is also about making, so she's into manufacturing. It's about how do we increase the productivity. Obviously, there's a new manufacturing strategy for the UK. And interestingly enough, Jill is also interested in manufacturing work. That's why we invited her over. We then have Haifa Modani from the CIPD. That's the Scottish, that's a Chartered Institute for Personal Development, CIPD. So that's a kind of association for HR people, if that's okay. I'm not a doctor. I'm sorry, I totally made that up. But in my conversations with Haifa, I always thought at least that's that degree. But she has a degree in computer sciences and in HR, which is an amazing, I think, merging of knowledge we have. Haifa is Senior Research Advisor in Data, Technology and AI. And her main interest in that area, as with the CIPD, is how can we actually create good work through technology? So we're focusing on work from a different perspective. And last but not least, it's an absolute pleasure to have Eva Luger here. Eva holds a chair in human data interaction. And I mean, if I would read out everything she did, as with everyone else, of course, in the room, it would take me far too long. But why did we invite Eva and why are we excited? Eva's perspective is really for so long about human data interaction and the questions about responsible AI, about ethics, intelligibility, that we are really excited. Shortly, she was also part of the leadership circle of the AI Alliance. And yeah, I think my translation is, we have you here because you might help us to understand how we understand data and our interactions with data. So that's going to be the deal for us. If you want to sit in front of here, do that. If you want to spread, I still haven't understood what happens to the stools, if they feel lonely or not. Just do as you wish. I'm going to give a short introduction so that we all start from the baseline. This outline here is called cabaret style. So the cabaret means that we do some dancing. That's our team. We then have the solo singers answering some questions. And then the audience gives us some flowery applause in form of questions, of course, as well. So this is how we go. And this is how far I could stretch the metaphor. Okay. You want to sit? Just remain with us here? Yeah. Okay. So, a deep breath. So what is it about? When we started, we thought about keeping the human in the loop. And I think an interesting thing here is that we hear so much about keeping the human in the loop that it's quite worthwhile to reflect on what it actually means. What we are meaning here is who's making decisions when it comes to AI. And there are different levels. We know that machine learners should be introduced into AI machine learning and make decisions. We are interested in a very complicated setting that are production processes. Where's the human in this loop actually, and who's making decisions? What we're also interested is one specific part of this quote. And it's a funny quote because no one really knows if this guy, Baron G. Bennis, actually ever said that. It's attributed to him. I found a reference where it said 2016. Unfortunately, Mr. Bennis died already in 2014, so he can't even really have said that in 2016. Why is it an interesting quote? For dog lovers, but like, really, do I want that? It's about the dog will have the task to dissuade the human to touch the automated system. Why do we want that? Why do we not want humans to touch the system? That was a long-term thinking, isn't it? That's a kind of engineering paradise. Just get people out of here, touch it. I see the IT guys over there, production company smiling. Yeah, just no, don't touch that. So that is a long-standing and ongoing debate. That's not really new, isn't it? But isn't that maybe something we need to think about? Because the don't touch me could be taken too far. We had some positive referencing to Elon Musk earlier on, and I just wanted to remind us here that Elon Musk had to go through a really interesting experience in 2018 because he figured out he might have been creatively destroyed the market for engines by bringing his E-engine idea. Still, he needed to assemble cars. So he realized, no, that doesn't work. We can't just add assembly to assembly to assembly. So we still need the human here. Sadly enough, if you look at workers' narratives there, health and safety conditions in his companies and his factories are not really good, but that's for another day. What I wanted to focus on here is the question about, so what do we see? We have something old, obviously, going on. There's something new going on. Something seems to be borrowed, we don't know yet, and something blue. So that's for people who don't know about that saying, because I didn't know when I came to this country. Not this country, but to the English-speaking context, it's a marriage thing. That's obviously what you bring for the bride. You bring something new, something old, something borrowed, something blue. The blue signifying something with value, right? So what do we have if we have the marriage of AI with the human-machine relation? What's happening there? So what's old? Oh, yeah. The future of work, again, scaremongering, we lose all the jobs. Oh, but there were new jobs. I spare you this debate because you know that. Everybody has heard about that. We have something new though. And the new thing here is that with AI systems, with new technologies in combination with AI, or let's say algorithmic management, which is not really AI. I know people in the room know that better than I do. We have the option to go into cognition and behavior. So we are not only controlling the time that is taken when we are at work, not only is it about the motions we are doing when we're at work, it's getting deeper into our brains. Well, yes, literally into our brains to figure out how we are feeling when we're at work. We have something borrowed here, and I say that is borrowed, and I hope, Andy, you forgive me for that. I'm just thinking, yeah, we're taking the mindset of fintech, aren't we? We have this big data. Can we not just combine it in a more productive way? Can we not learn from others? Isn't data actually underused in a sector where it's so common to capture that much data? It is very complicated. In the 90s, we knew that already. If anyone in the room still remembers, SAP came in, right? That was the new factory settings where data was gathered from everywhere, a new visualization of data. But still what happened was that we dissuaded the workers from the systems running, right? So it got to this remote idea. We're coming back to that. What we also have seen for a while is that everything nowadays is value-driven. You know, globalization should be value-driven, and so should industry. Industry should be value-driven. It should be human-centric, sustainable, and resilient. And that resonates well with the values we are connecting here to the AI Summit about trustworthiness, ethical, and I've forgotten the third one is trustworthiness, ethical, and responsibility. Yes, inclusivity. See, how could I forget? I know why. Now, what's the business case? Just a quick talking is through so that we get on the same level here. So we're talking about things we heard before, but not really. So if you check in, and that's really just kind of raw summary here, we have predictive maintenance, predictive quality, scrap reduction, increasing throughput, demand, and inventory forecasting. Now think about demand and inventory forecasting in terms of Amazon fulfillment centers. On an hourly basis, they can schedule how many workers they actually need. Same holds true for any other factory system. It's actually quite impressive how far you can already go in managing that. If you think, though, about predictive maintenance, that was always a core where we said, oh, we need the human to predict what might go wrong next, right? But now there is, and I love that quote, there's this kind of presentiment of immense potential here, right? It's a presentiment so far because a lot of that is in early stages. So don't get me wrong, we are not at a stage where everything is in place here. We're talking about potentialities, and this is why we need to talk about it, because we still can then human-centric, human-driven, value-driven change things if we wish to. So where's the data coming from? We have a new word for everything mostly, and here it's about human cyber physical systems. That's the word that's coming from industry here. What is it about? So data gathering in digital manufacturing. I spare you the machine data gathering. We can imagine that, yeah, machines are kind of delivering data to machines. But what is it that makes it so interesting, and where we see from our perspective a shift in how these systems are thought, because it's no longer semi-autonomous in that the human gets in a bit, but we see the more and more that's connected to our bodies while we're at work. So we have headsets, wristbands, we have tablets and phones holding, and we have collaborative robots called cobots. Now, what does that mean? I just give you a glimpse, and just in case you haven't worked in a factory on the shop floor lately. What happens is that imagine you're wearing your wristband and you're sweating in the gym, but it's not your gym, but you're sweating at work. And your wristband tells you, no, but you need to run for another 5 rounds, but it's not your gym, you're at work. Think about the data glasses. but you're not sitting with your VA glasses doing a video game, but you're at work and the glasses tell you where to go next and what you did wrong. Tablets and phones, always available. Can you actually switch off? And the collaborative robot, I think it's this idea of how an industry successfully claimed the idea of collaboration. But that means it's not me telling Jill, come on, move on faster. It's a machine telling me. What does it actually mean? So I'm there on the factory floor where I'm communicating supposedly, but is that even communication? So this is the question then, where do we go from here? So employees are included into the double loop of planning and predicting. Systems are ever more personalized and subjectivized. So they are in the center in a way. So we as workers might be in the center, but how much are we in the loop? That means in the way to make decisions. I'm going to end here and hand over to Dora for our next bit.
Thank you, Kendra, for that introduction. Now I have the task of asking our speakers to speak in an impossibly short time, 3 to 5 minutes, from their perspectives on what they think the challenges are for the human in the loop, specifically in the context of smart manufacturing or manufacturing more generally. We'll go through each of the speakers, ask for their views, and then we can open it up to questions, either to the specific speakers or to the panel in general. So let me start with Jill. You're up first, Jill. Your core expertise is from an operations management background, and you've collaborated with engineers in manufacturing contexts. So can you give us your thoughts on what you think the challenges are and whether the workforce can be part of strategic operations management?
Thanks very much. Is the microphone on? So thanks very much for the introductions. My name is Jill McBride. I'm a professor here at Strathclyde. A few faces that know me know that I've kind of worked in engineering departments, and these days I'm in the business school, so I kind of cross disciplines. And for my sins at the moment, I'm co-director of the Interact network, and that's part of the Made Smarter family. And some of you will be aware that in the UK, we're putting a lot of money into trying to encourage the development of industrial digital technologies and the uptake of them in manufacturing. And a lot of the money is going into the technology, but where the Interact network's different is it's much more focused around people. So it's about humans, it's about society, and it's about the kind of social, economic kind of side of smart, if you like. So that's where I'm coming from. And I'm probably going to be contentious by saying I don't like this term human in the loop, because I don't know about you, but when I say to somebody, I send them an email and say, just to keep you in the loop, I don't really put them at the center of that picture. I'm saying I'm keeping you informed. So I'm not that keen on human in the loop to start off with, and I don't know what you think about that. But for me, I kind of think, you know, we hear about jobs, and I certainly believe that we're going to create more jobs through digital than we're going to lose. That doesn't help the person whose job is being displaced by technology. So I'm not an economist who only looks at the grand scale. I do look at the people side as well. So in Interact, I am concerned about the jobs we're losing, but I'm also enthusiastic about the jobs that we're creating. I would also say that something that interests me is in the UK, we started talking about Industry 4, probably big style in about 2017, when we had Jürgen Mayer from Siemens running the Made Smarter review for the UK. And in that, we were very much kind of following the German model. Germans have been talking about Industry 4 for a while. But I was really interested because if anybody looked overseas a bit further, then in Japan, before that, in 2016 and even before that, they were talking about Society 5. So they didn't start by thinking about the technology. They started by thinking about what's the society we want to create, and then how do we use technology to do that? So I've always kind of had one eye on, you know, is Industry 4 the way to go? Or should we have been starting with what do we want to create to help humans? And now we're talking about Industry 5, which I think probably came out of a lot of EU work. And again, they talk about human in the loop, but we won't get into that. If we talk about strategic operations management, smart manufacturing, that can mean a lot of things. It can mean design of products, design of services, design of factories, might mean about quality, it's about planning and flow and capacity, and about improvement and performance. Now, anybody who's worked in manufacturing knows that we've been using technology in all these areas for a very long time now. But I think we could be using it a lot more, and we're going to see it escalate, I think, much, much faster. I think going forward, where we're going to see it more, particularly AI, I think is in areas like procurement. I think we're going to see it in more in innovation settings about helping us design products and services. And perhaps even then, the human in the loop, as they talk about, might even be the customers. How do we interact with customers? And one area I think is really interesting is people talk about connected factories. Now, Gartner report gets, there's a report by the Gartner Group in 2021 that said in the future, it's not going to be factory competing with factory, it's going to be ecosystems competing with ecosystems. It's going to be much more joined up. And if we are going to go that way, and I think the academic research kind of suggests that that maybe is what the future looks like, then we need technology to make these connections and to help us work together and do that in a connected way. But it also needs humans, it needs trust, it needs networks, it needs collaboration. And for me, I think technology can help with that. The other thing I'm going to throw in is manufacturing, I think, is in a real crisis just now about being able to recruit talent and retain talent. Lots of figures get bandied about, but the one the most recent one I talk about is Make UK says 36% of vacancies in manufacturing are proving very hard to fill. And we compare that with the national average in the UK, which I think is 24%. You might tell me a much better figure. But that worries me. When I'm out talking to manufacturing businesses, getting people is a problem. Now, I think one of the things that technology can help us with is actually making jobs in manufacturing more attractive. I think it's time to make manufacturing sexy again, to make it, attractive, modern, the things that's going to give us a resilient economy, new products, the stuff that we want to buy. And I think technology actually is an enabler of that. So I think that's quite exciting. And another positive that I'm going to have is we've just done a survey of 2,100 people in the UK, asking them about perceptions of manufacturing. And we've not fully analysed the data here, but I'll give you a couple of flavours. So we asked 2,100 people across the UK what they think about it, and 59% of respondents say that new digital technologies will make manufacturing jobs more interesting and rewarding. So if we can use technology to make it more attractive, I'm all for that. Another figure, 49% think digital technology will mean less repetitive, more creative jobs. And I also hope that by using technology, the cobots and things that Kendra talked about, it might mean that it's more welcoming, more inclusive. That certainly a lot of people my age, when you start to have creaky knees and sore backs and things, then using technology to stop you having to crawl along the ground and into difficult spaces, and using VR sets or using cobots to lift heavy things might actually open up the workplace. So I'm very positive. I'm not saying there's not negatives, but for just now, I'm going to give you quite a positive picture and stop at that.
Thank you. It's good to start positive. But it was a nice segue to people management, and I'd like to shift to Haifa. And Haifa, you work for the CIPD, which is a professional body for HR in the UK. You've got a computer science background. You've written some fantastic reports on technology and people management. And we talk a lot about people analytics and skill development. What do you think the challenges are within a smart manufacturing context then for people management?
Okay, so in the smart manufacturing context, I would, as Jill was explaining, a lot of automation, design, and optimizing everything that's routine, basically. So if you think about the person being managed from when they get hired to them working in the workplace, being developed, and then them leading a company, quite a lot of that life cycle has been taken over by technology in terms of like performance management, for example. If you work in the shop floor, you've got all that technology stuck on you, telling you, you know, work faster, slower, etc., or you've made a mistake. So that part of things is already been taken care of by technology. And even when it comes to skills as well, if it's, you know, okay, you've done this level, time for you to take the next one, that's all for. Where I think we need human input on this in terms of HR is, I like Jill's term about make manufacturing sexy again, because that kind of links to, you know, where people, HR or line managers, if they're doing the HR role, how they can make the job sexy again for people. So, okay, you've got all these things, you know, automated. What can you backfill in the role that would make that role interesting? Actually, okay, you can automate all these, but do you actually want to automate all this? And would you be losing that human interaction, you know, in terms of interaction, the conversations with people? Sometimes there's value in keeping some of that, so people feel that they have, you know, connections with the people at work. Because when we talk about job quality, it's more than just about pay and benefits. You know, it's also having good working relationships at work. It's about having, you know, a secure contract. It's you know, having good health and well-being, good work-life balance. It's very multifaceted, really. So thinking about, okay, we need to be efficient, we need to, you know, make the business successful, but let's keep the bits that we really care about so that we make work meaningful. So that's one aspect about job quality. And then the other thing is, you know, okay, great, there's the routine stuff has all been taken care of. And to some extent, you know, technology can help us look into the future and, you know, predict on what workforce planning and so on. But, you know, if you want to be an innovative company and plan forward, you have to work, because you have to work together with AI, with technology to chart that future. So yes, great, technology can help us go along the way, but I think moving forward, we need to work together with technology to chart that path to make the company successful.
Okay, thank you very much, Haiba. So it's for human resource management remit to make manufacturing sexy again, right? There's future research and policy in there. Finally, move to Eva. Eva, your work has been focused on human-centered inclusion in the design of AI systems, and I understand you co-led the development of University of Edinburgh's first data ethics and responsible innovation MOOC. Very impressive. So what can we learn from your work on human data interaction? How can we transform this and meet the challenges that we've been talking about?
Okay. I don't know how I'm going to follow make manufacturing sexy again. I was sitting here racking my brains. I'm just not going to bother. Okay, so I think human-computer interaction, or HCI, is the discipline that I come from. And there are a number of things that spring to mind immediately. And the first one is about intelligibility. So when we're talking about data-driven systems or artificial intelligence, the main issue that comes up from an interaction perspective is what people understand about the systems they're interacting with. So whether that's a system that you only see as sort of a very scant interface for, and you press one or two buttons and something happens, and that might be appropriate in some situations, but where the sort of the expertise or the knowledge levels of the user increase, or the user of the system, you know, the citizen, however you want to frame the human out, that's when we have to start thinking about maybe showing more of what a sort of an AI system can do. And that becomes incredibly difficult. And there's no solutions to it just yet. So these are things that people are writing numerous papers about, but we haven't got to a point where we can say anything sensible about it. However, there are sort of examples from other aspects of our interactions with technology. So if you think about use of the laptop, when you go to save a file on your laptop into a folder, you're not really doing that, right? That's not what's happening under the hood, but that metaphor, if you like, that idea is what explains to you what you should do so that you're interacting with the person that designs the system in a way that's expected. And what we don't have is a sort of a similar metaphor for interactions with artificial intelligence. So the file folder system has worked for years and years and years, to the extent that people don't even think about really what they're doing when they're interacting with it. So how do we think about designing those metaphors for systems within a manufacturing context? They're likely to be vastly different, because sometimes you'd be interacting with a robot potentially, other times you'd be interacting with an interface where you only have one or two options so as to minimize harm. Other situations, you might be more expert and have to make some decision about which aspect of the system you stimulate and which bit of the system you repress. So the development of kind of metaphors and mental models are what's important. And a mental model is the way that you understand a thing. So you might think, going back to the file and folder system, you might think that that's exactly what happens under the hood, and that's an appropriate thing for you to think because that's how it's been designed, but that's not how the system operates, and it doesn't matter. So those ideas that are sometimes just little stories we tell ourselves, and then the little icon or the symbol or the thing that tells you how to interact with something are currently absent. So that's the first thing I'd say about HCI. The other thing is that within the kind of the human-led design environment, we tend to co-design with people. And that's not done very often. And part of that is sort of in wider context. And part of that is the kind of the ethnographic approach, where we look at how people just do really boring things every day. So if you were sort of working with their traffic controllers, you'd maybe spend like 2 or 3 weeks in their traffic control environment, just watching the tiny things that people do, the boring things they don't even notice themselves. So when you interview them, they wouldn't identify them. But then when you watch them sort of painstakingly for 3 weeks, you can say, you do this thing, what does that mean? And then explain it to you. And that's how we can design these kinds of AI systems better, so they actually respond to people's behavior in context. Because otherwise you can design a system and it's not only not used, but also potentially dangerous. So I think those are the sort of the 2 important things. But I'd make some sort of 2 other comments. And one is about the idea that we're really rubbish at predicting what's going to be the next big advance in artificial intelligence. And a really classic example of that is the recent one. So, you know, the rise of generative AI or large language models or ChatGPT, you might be more familiar with, or Midjourney. So nobody really saw that this was going to be the big transformative AI advance that was going to change the way we think about responsibility in technology. Everybody thought it was going to be something much more sophisticated and interesting in a different way, but there were people sort of in labs grinding away at these problems, and they suddenly, you know, solved quite a lot of them, were able to put these models out in the world. And what we found is that it's totally transforming knowledge work. So, you know, you can generate a fairly reasonable essay using these models. You know, people can cheat really effectively, which is terrifying for every academic in the room. You know, it's like suddenly we have to upskill in these areas that we didn't realize were coming. And so, and I should say that in 2016, the House of Lords predicted that creative industries and knowledge work were the 2 areas never going to be touched by AI. Well done, guys. So now we know that that's obviously not true at all. And then just one last point, which is sort of reasonably relevant. I've not worked in a manufacturing context specifically, but I've worked with knowledge workers a lot. And one of the bits of research that I did was with accountants. I worked with the Institute of Chartered Accountants for England and Wales and the big companies and some of the sort of the medium-sized ones, and conducted a series of interviews, about 30 in total, where we talked in depth with what people felt the kind of the impacts of AI would be on that profession. And what we found at that time, that was about 4 years ago, what we found at that time is that accountants genuinely believed that their industry was not going to be massively affected beyond the kind of the low-level number crunching. So, I interview lots of people in different contexts, and one thing is always true: we as humans believe we're more special than we are. You know, it's like we sort of think, oh well, you know, I'm so clever, and this is the kind of, especially in knowledge work, and I'm academic, right? Of course, we all think this all the time. We think we're completely irreplaceable, but actually, we're really not. And the accountants that I spoke to believed that they weren't going to be replaced anytime soon, because they brought wisdom to bear, they brought knowledge. And when they were asked to unpack what wisdom and knowledge looked like, it was like, well, we take data and we look for patterns. And I was just like, you know, so that's exactly what artificial intelligence does, right? An AI system is a pattern recognition system. So what is it about us that's special as human beings? And I think that's the kind of the question that will help us answer some of the gnarly problems that are going to come up in the context of manufacturing. You know, what makes us special and how can we protect that? And I think that's really important, particularly when we talk about responsible AI development, because there are some things that perhaps we shouldn't allow the deployment of AI or algorithmic systems to touch, but we've got to decide as a society what those things are. I think that's our most pressing challenge going forward.
Thank you very much, Shiva. Thank you all for sticking to your time. So now is the chance to open it up to everybody. And if you have any questions, direct to individuals or to the panel as a whole. We've got about 10 minutes here for that. So please just put your hand up and we'll get you a mic. Andy? we got a mic? No, there it is behind you.
So this is Andy Sherlock. I'm Director of Data Driven Manufacturing at NMIS, National Manufacturing Institute, Scotland. I thought the Elon Musk quote is really interesting because he's a sort of tech bro and a huge amount of kind of hubris there in thinking that you can just solve lots of manufacturing by automating with technology. And I think making stuff's quite hard. And so it makes me think there's people in manufacturing more than just people like pressing stamps and welding stuff. You know, the people there have a huge amount of knowledge and innate ability to make the system do what it's supposed to do. And they have in their head these mental models of what the system is and what it's supposed to do. And so my question really is, do you think that those kind of autonomous look at of thinking about employees, that's the kind of stuff that will go away maybe, but how do we capture what the people with the knowledge? It's the reason why Tesla struggled for a long time to get their doors to close as well as Mercedes do, you know, because Mercedes know how to do that. They've got people who know how to make the machines, make the doors that do that.
Yes, go ahead. Yeah.
And I mean, this is something we look at a lot in Interact. And one of the other things we're doing, we did the survey recently, but the other thing we're doing is we're having round tables and asking people about the future of work and how they envisage it. And something you said, I'm often surprised how uncreative people have been in these workshops. They're not seeing the kind of the big exciting opportunities. But I do still very much think we do need people. I mean, AI can do a heck of a lot for us. We can, you know, it can recreate the art, it can do all these kind of things, but it's not got the feeling, it's not got the agency, it's not got the kind of intent and the emotion and so on. So I think there's a heck of a lot that we still need the people for. You know, and the other thing that I talked about was I think the future might be more about networking and collaboration and open innovation. And I think technology can help, but it still is a bigger job for people. So I would also like to think that the time that's freed up in the workplace with the repetitive stuff, technology helping us, frees up time where we can do more creative things with people. And that's actually things that you said people value. And our survey also said that flexibility and autonomy was important across the board, and we've not analysed it yet by age group, but I suspect we might see differences. But it was as important as pay and conditions in our survey generally. So some initial thoughts.
How do we encourage your employers to think this way?
Is this specifically to manufacturing? To how do we get manufacturers to think this way? Is that a question?
Whatever you want. Yes. Yeah.
I was saying this earlier, actually, that there's no way of getting around it, but you do need to put some money into it towards the employees, and that money could be in pounds and pence, or it could just be time to talk through things and understanding what it will need, and then we go from there.
I think we're in agreement. It's about extending the human rather than replacing them, and it's not often I agree with Elon Musk, but I am today.
Go ahead. Yeah.
Right. Yeah, I think there's definitely a role for the human in that kind of in the system. If you think of the system as sort of being everything, and there are some aspects. So we're completely different reasoners, aren't we, from the way that a system reasons? We're heuristic reasoners, so we're not logical necessarily. And maybe some of those decisions that need to be made don't always have to be logical or data-driven. Sometimes instinctive decisions are appropriate. And I think that's where the humans, you know, still have some weight. It's the point at which somebody that designs an algorithm is able to unpick how we develop our heuristic reasoning that we'll probably have a problem. And I've no doubt that those advances will occur. But yeah, I think trying to keep the human in the loop as much as possible in that broader sense is the way to go.
Haifa, would you like to come back? Yep. Yeah.
It's just yeah, I'm just thinking back to a guide that we published recently, CIPD Responsible Investment in Technology Guide. And we have some key questions that employers can ask about, you know, the impact of technology on jobs. And if you ask these questions, hopefully it'll prompt you to, you know, when you introduce new technology to people, that you know, you consider their situations as well. So that's, you know, 6 different ways in which technology can impact people. You know, one is to obviously substitute them with technology, but the other one is augmentation. There's also, you know, intensification and so on and so forth. So it's asking those questions and seeing how we can consider the people.
Okay, thank you. Can we take one question from the chat first of all, and then I'll come to you.
We have a question here. Do we need to push animism or anthropomorphism to achieve industry 5 capabilities? Should we be careful in how we integrate and or engage with our tools? And this is the way that the panel
I would hate us to push towards anthropomorphism. I think the idea that you think about artificial intelligence as though it's human-like is where a lot of our problems come from. That's not how those systems operate or work. You know, a neural net does not function exactly like a brain. It might be modeled on the idea of a brain. It's not the same thing. And if we start thinking about systems as human-like, then it also inflames some of the concerns around them, which don't necessarily need to be in place. I think what we need to do is better understand the systems, understand the limitations of them, as well as what they can do in order to be able to engage with them properly. But I think pretending that they act, that, you know, sort of magical and they think like a human being is, you know, nonsense, and it doesn't really help us. You know, we might choose a different idea or a metaphor. We might decide that it's a little bit like the dog, or it might be like something else. And I think that's fine as long as we're aware that it's like something, and it's definitely not a human.
I don't think I've got an awful lot more to add, just to say, you know, if you think about it, how many of us would actually vote to have some kind of technology as our boss? Now, sometimes we might not like our boss, but like, I don't think I'd be voting for a technology boss.
It's a tricky one, isn't it? Because there'll be situations where you might prefer to talk to a bot than a human. Maybe if it's a private matter, you'd rather test it with a bot first before you talk to someone else. So I would say no, you know that AI is not a person. It's for sure. You treat it how you like, but no, it's not a person.
Okay, thanks. Could we have a question over here?
Hi, I'm Michaela, and I am from the Scottish Government. And other than my day job, I also like making things. So my question is, what do you think is going to happen to the human desire to make or innovate with this? Do you think that increasingly it is going to diminish, or in fact, it's just going to mean that the things that are genuinely made by people, even though they might be in some way inferior in quality, are going to be higher in value? Because you've put some time into it to this one question. And if I can kind of another one, which is really connected to it, and the previous question on anthropomorphism and so on, you know, do you think that that's just going to deepen sort of the divide between socioeconomic groups? Say you want to have a human carer and not something that is like a bot, and you want that human touch, whatever that means, but that time is possibly going to be much more expensive than something that can be done on a large scale. Yeah, for anyone who can pick up that question.
Okay.
Yes. Yeah, I definitely think so. I mean, we already see it, don't we? You think about artisanal bread and how expensive that is now. As my grandmother was like, you know, old Polish woman who was, you know, always did manual labor her whole life. And she used to make bread herself. And we'd be like, oh, what the shop bought bread, you know, because it was sliced and it came in a bag, you know. And now our value system has changed to the extent where that we'll pay £7 or £8 for a loaf of bread because it's made of sourdough, you know, as opposed to buying sliced bread. And there's good nutritional reasons for that, as well as other things, obviously, because of the process. But nonetheless, so I think I can see that definitely happening. And I think we might see slight differences, I suppose, when it comes to like image development and things like that. So I can see lots of people using, for example, we see the example of ChatGPT at the minute where people are using all these different models to develop images that then they use in presentations, that they use in different contexts. And so and that's kind of undercutting the artist effectively. You know, it's removing the kind of the skill and the artistry from that context, but it's also just, I don't know if I'm legally correct here, but effectively stealing the IP to some extent, right? You know, somebody's developed a thing and a system has rolled over all of these images and it's sort of said, this is an image in the style of, without actually, you know, literally, it's not literally stolen something, but it's created something in a similar image. So I think there's probably two sides to it. One is that AI produces things that are quick and easy and exciting and feel a little bit magical, and we want to be able to access these things cheaply or for free. And so there's a whole set of industries potentially that will just find themselves having to either keep up or, you know, ensure that they lobby to get the right regulations in place to protect themselves. And then, so that's the first part of your question. And then the second part, you just have to remind me quickly what that was, because I did have thought about that as well. Yeah, I think so. And that's the other thing, isn't it? I mean, I think there's potentially going to be a divide between those people that can afford the best, as there always has been, afford the best care, and those that can't. And maybe automated care is the cheaper care, so perhaps that's not the best one. But at the same time, you know, there has been research that's looked at how people feel about being cared for by robots rather than humans. And it seems to suggest that in some cases people prefer it because they don't feel the level of humiliation that they do when they have, for example, you know, their bum wiped by somebody that they don't know. And so I think there's definitely that's a more nuanced debate. And I think it's just about, in that case, sort of safety and ensuring that there's human connections still available in place. It might not necessarily be through some aspects of care that might be better devolved to, you know, the kind of the robotics context, but certainly I think the dynamics are going to alter.
My comment on the human carer versus bot thing, because there's an MIT research, I think, that was looking at that and saying that you know, the investment they put in, you know, didn't really realize despite putting lots of money into it. So the example being, I can't remember, they had different kinds of bots, and one being like the cuddly bot, and, you know, end up being like the elderly people, like just basically just kept there by themselves to themselves and didn't want to share it around. So in the end, you know, the carers had to step in, and so with the hope of saving time, but actually in the end, you know, the carers are just passing the bots around to the carers if you put to the different elderly people. So that's not really a good use of their time. They could just be dancing, you know, reading book with them, and that's part of their job anyway before the bots came over. So I think until we find a way where the bots can interact with people in ways that doesn't kind of disrupt the workflow, at the moment, I think it's still human carers still wins in this case.
Okay, could I just come back to our last questioner here? Yeah, you still want to ask a question? Let me give the mic. Yeah. Thank you very much, Zoom audience. Go ahead. Yeah.
Hey, so question about human in the loop. Which loop? So sometimes we see that there's a little bit of a difference between how, let's say, we see processes from an operational perspective. We map certain things on the shop floor, so a bit of a manufacturing question, or we create a scenario of the interaction, have a specific process map for that. But then unforeseen issues appear, let's say, on the shop floor, how things are used. So there was this study done in Turkey in the Kocaeli region, which is as according to my Turkish colleagues, is the largest manufacturing area in Turkey, which buys a lot of British technology. And what they found is that this technology that was sort of understood and quite popular in the UK, when used on the shop floor in Turkey, was not really just interacted with in the same way. So yeah, which loop are we talking about, and how do we kind of capture the right loops to talk about having humans in?
Great question.
I think it is a great question. I don't think I've got an answer to it, but the Interact Network, we're actually just about to start a study looking at international dimensions. So it is one that I will bring up. So I think it's a useful one for me. Thank you for that. Has anybody got any?
No, okay, that's all right. We can move on to wrapping up and maybe we can discuss afterwards. I'll hand back.
Thank you so much. Thanks so much, everyone. There's laid plans, right? I would love to chat more and to hear more from the audiences. I think we want to come back to one specific thing here. And you mentioned that earlier. What's the role for our manufacturing mindset, the mental settings here, and what we did in our project, and what I just want to briefly bring in to you as a kind of observation and exploration so far. Our question originally was, can AI ethics be embedded in the innovation lifecycle? And we were really interested and eager to understand the full life cycle, really from the start. As you said, well, for whom is it actually, who's in the loop and at what point? It blew our mind because it's so complex, isn't it? If you think about it, really, it is really complicated. And it's just a tiny explorative project we had. So what we did was we focused on the engineers. It's an umbrella term here, right? So we focused on the people planning and modeling, whoever that is these days. So we did some interviews, we did a literature review, and we did the qualitative content analysis. And I skipped that one because what's really important for us are our preliminary findings to share with you. We see an uptake, and real uptake in research activities centering on the human. Right, so there's a clear, so we checked in with research papers that are on Arxiv, because we heard from domain experts that's their source to go to. So there is an uptake of the discourse, right? But there is an absolute limitation, to the modeling for employees as agents of change or decision makers. So the human is brought in, but it's kind of pacified. So we still have this, and this is a real shortcut here. We have the machine all of a sudden as a caretaker of the human, and the human is the risk bearer. So the human is still the risk because it's so unpredictable, which is quite interesting for us because this is where we start, isn't it? That is, of course, true. But what are the questions then we need to ask? So what we see is that we have the old saying, something old, something new, something loose, something borrowed. Engineering continues towards its trodden path of delivering solutions to real world problems. Great. But are they really innovative so far? The human is brought in anew, that's great, through topics like risks, health, safety, well-being. And discipline also suggests to add value as in being value-centric and being caring for people. But it's a patronizing care so far. Because what we also see is that engineering borrows, which is nice, it's interdisciplinary, borrows from psychological and social sciences to better understand human behavior. But in this borrowing process, who's there? So we see all of a sudden psychological modeling used in domains where it wasn't used before, without actually engaging with people who are experts in that domain. So I think in this point of departure where the innovative process maybe might start, we already see that the human is compartmentalized and in a way reduced to a number, because what you can't, Jed, help me, what you can't measure, you can't manage.
Yes,
so
what gets added is managed in that sense that I understand things in terms of clear metrics that can be translated.
Yeah.
We can manage that. Can't be measured or we can't manage it. It's complex.
Yeah. So this is maybe our final word here, and I want to thank our guests to come in. I hope we continue this conversation. I find it really massively inspiring. Thanks, Jill, Haifa, and Eva for coming. Thanks for the audience to being patient. We ran totally over with everything. We wanted to make it more inclusive, but all of a sudden we have the measurement of the time, and that's all we can manage, or can we? Thank you so much.
Thank you so much to everyone. I love that everything I've listened to today has inspired conversation, and I think is getting us to really think about the breadth of how AI affects us. So really interesting topics. Thank you so much to everyone for contributing. I bring good news. It's the afternoon break. Coffee will be served outside, which I'm sure you're all in need of a cup for. But before you go, can I just mention that we do have a workshop happening up the stairs in stage D, which is being run by the Children and AI project, and it's about children's rights. Sounds fascinating. Please, some of you, if you're interested in that area, do go along. So up the stairs, stage D. I also have to encourage you to name the AI blobs. Who has had a selfie taken so far today? You get the gold star, and everyone else needs to put a little bit more effort in. So may I ask all of you, try and get a selfie taken, put forward a suggestion for the name, and then we'll hear what the children vote on it at the very end of everything. And please, if you've not had a chance to check out some of the exhibitors we've got, there are online exhibitors as well as the ones that we've got in person. Please go and enjoy your coffee. But maybe one last little round of applause for all our speakers who contributed. Thank you.